thank you so much for joining us here. We are currently sitting in a podcast booth that DHS has so graciously offered us to use. I will say Carrie and I are a little bit nervous just because this dream of ours is really coming to fruition, but it has happened so quickly. So we just wanted to come on and kind of tell you a little bit about how this has happened and our dreams of where it's going. But we also want to ask for some grace because we're probably going to stumble through this. And we hope that you just grow with us through this process. So we do have some people that we really want to thank because we've been given a lot of grace and just have really been said, go and do. And so there are some people that we want to thank in this process.
Yeah, so for starters, when we filmed our last podcast, Jeffrey and Costanzia both were instrumental in getting us this wonderful space to shoot from. And so we wanted to thank them for putting that together for us. Then we also, of course, want to thank Laura and Rodney and Janelle, right? Yes. Awesome supervisors who have given us the space to create and to bring content to you guys and do it in innovative ways. So we're thankful to everybody who contributed to us being able to do this.
Absolutely. So just from our first podcast to now and where we're at, I think leaps and bounds different, right?
It is. And so today we are using not only the space, but we're learning to use the equipment and learning to piece it all together.
Right.
And so we really felt that this was a safe place and a safe audience to launch something new. And so thank you guys for being a safe space for us.
Absolutely. So, let's just talk about what we envision through this process.
Right.
So, our whole goal, I think, all along has just been bringing things to you guys as OJA that's beneficial for the work that we do and the families that we serve. And so what do you see, Carrie? What do you think that's going to look like for us?
Yeah, so when we started this thing, this Monday morning meeting, and it was a way to learn, and then it just grew. We began to talk about how do we take one OJA and make everybody feel like we're in the same office space or we have this connection, even though we're miles apart. And we brought all of these presenters via Teams to show us a PowerPoint and tell us about their space. But then we thought, what would it be like after we toured the Teen Challenge High School that we had? After we went and we toured it, we began to think, how great would it be if we could take the camera and have more of conversation style, get it on the road and have people see what we get to see as we're bringing this together.
Right, because we felt like that was such a great experience for us, but that we felt like so many people missed out on that because we couldn't bring that on to a Monday morning meeting just because PowerPoint is so one-dimensional and just words can't describe some of the things that we could see. And so our vision with this podcast isn't always just sitting in a booth like this, but our vision is to actually go places and video what they'll allow us to video, right? And then to put all of that together for our team, our coworkers to be able to see.
Yeah, so we can hear, talk, and experience.
Yeah.
I think one of the ways it's really going to help our workers and youth and families is when you tell somebody about a resource, that's good. When you give them the information, that's good. But when you can say, you're going to go and park in the south parking lot, you're going to come in the south door, and the first thing you're going to see is a big green desk. And at that green desk, that's where you go and ask for help, and they'll direct you to your next steps. That's very different than just handing them a name and a number.
Right, right. And as a worker, whenever I was placing a kid somewhere or giving that resource, and if I didn't know anything about it, the family was looking at me and going, "Wait, you're putting my kid where?" Because I was supposed to be the expert, and if I didn't have that information, it was I didn't feel like I was able to guide the family very well. And we have so many new employees that I was very fortunate. I had a coworker that had been with the agency for a long time. And so he was my resource. I was able to walk into his office and say, "Tell me about." And now I'm not sure that we have that same experience with the type of work that a lot of us are doing.
Right.
So we want to be able to help be that resource.
Right. And we might not get to film everything.
Right.
But what we can film will help. I know that when I started, I had great office people, but everybody quit. And I was 30 days in, now the senior worker.
Wow.
In the office. And so from that point on, it was a lot of just by myself learning and doing. And so I could be standing at the wrong door at a detention center that's never, it's not going to open. That's not the door you come in, right? But not knowing those things, I think we can help out in a fun way.
Right. And that's our whole goal here. I mean, our whole goal is to have fun and to bring things differently to our audience that are, if they're traveling, maybe they can play the podcast. I did not know that some people watched podcasts. I did not learn that until my young adult daughter. I called her one day and said, "What are you doing?" She's like, "I'm watching a podcast." I said, "You listen to podcasts. You don't watch podcasts." And she's like, "No, they're on YouTube. You can watch podcasts." It's like, why would you do that? But some people do. And so we felt like, let's try to hit all of it, right? Instead of just some people being able to listen to us, we wanted to film a lot of things too, so that people could watch us.
Right. It needs more people where they are and how they like to engage with content.
Absolutely.
That's good. Which kind of leads me into the next kind of vision of the podcast. We're going to have times where we're sitting in a roundtable discussion.
Yes.
And we're going to be talking about what was it like for you to be a new worker? Right. What are some of those mistakes that you had that you're like, oh my goodness, and then how did you get through it? And so that's going to be some of the content we're going to bring on this podcast.
Right, because we want to bring some of you all in and have you as the ones that we're interviewing and hear your stories and want you to share and to be here to grow with us and to help teach the rest of the workers around the state. Because I know Carrie and I have had vastly different careers, I think, to end up where we're at together. I don't know that we really knew each other, even though at times we were in the same district, but we didn't know each other well. But our careers have intersected often. So, but our experiences as JSU workers have been different. And so we would love to hear your stories as well. And would love for you all to be able to share some of the things that you have experienced with your kids and families.
Yeah, and we would love to hear how things are done differently across the state. We were sitting in a Hope planning meeting with District 2, and they were sharing with me all of the ways that they do intake. And I began to think, the rest of the state needs to hear this.
Absolutely.
That way, new workers all the way through seasoned workers have new ideas and new ways of linking youth and families to resources and advocacy for those. Because what you may think of to do, I haven't thought of yet.
Absolutely.
And some of the things that I've thought of will help you. And so when we bring those stories out and more people get to see them, then we're not on an island by ourselves. Like, wait a second, I remember District 2 tried this.
Yeah.
I'm going to try that as well.
I will say one of the most intimidating things I ever did in my career was when Dottie went on maternity leave and I had to do intakes. I was like, I don't know. I don't know what to do here. And I was a very seasoned worker. So it would have been nice to have, somebody that I could have reached out to and said, help me. And even though Dottie had planned everything and had it all, sorted out and had packets made for us, it was still very intimidating to do something in my career that I had not done before. So,
yeah, and we're having a lot of ADSs and DSs ask us to do that, to cross-train. We don't just want our intake workers to know, we want all of our staff to know, and I think that that's helpful. Absolutely. And this is another way to do that. Yeah. So you mentioned Dottie, so Dottie's not here today because she was on the road, but you're going to see Dottie here participating in this podcast as well. So she's doing phenomenal work. We love
her partnership with us.
Yeah. And we love the perspective she brings because we're at state office, she's in the field. I heard workers for the longest time say things like, well, I've been out of the field for so many years. And me being in the field at the time, I was like, what?
Yeah.
Now that I'm out of the field, it's like, do we still do this in the field?
Right.
Yes, we do. Right. And so she's an asset on the team.
Absolutely.
So we wanted to acknowledge that as well. A lot of podcasts are open to the public. So let's talk for a second. The content that we're talking about and the things that we're sharing right now are going to be in-house at the moment. Not that it's super secret squirrel, but that we're starting and we're learning, and we're learning with our audience.
Right. And I just think that brings a little bit more comfort to us as we learn. And that way, if we were to make a mistake or to say something that wasn't quite accurate or, just whatever it may be, that it would just be within our house at this point. Our hope is to eventually, like a lot of state agencies have podcasts that you can download on just any podcast site like Apple or Spotify, and you can download their podcast and listen to that publicly. Our hope and dream, I think our big dream is that our OJA podcast is eventually one day one of those podcasts that you can download and anybody can listen to that to learn more about our agency and what we do and how we really care for the kids that we work with. But starting out, we're just going to be safe with a safe audience, and that's you guys. And so it is going to be to that closed audience.
Yeah. And a benefit to that is we can bring in success stories and specific stories and things like that we're not needing so much of the memorandums of understanding or the releases or the things like that. So we can learn and bring in some stuff for everybody to see without those concerns.
Right.
So I'm excited. I'm excited that there's the potential for us to be the voice of OJA. Right?
Right. Yeah.
And we're a top 10 agency. And so what does that look like? What does juvenile justice look like if we're hope-centered treatment, prevention? What does that look like in juvenile justice? And so,
well, and I'm excited for people just all around to see the good work that we are doing and the difference that our staff is making with our families. And, I whenever I get out and I talk to people, a lot of the things that we're hearing is that it's not the same OJA that it was 10 years ago. Well, right. And that's so good. And, 10 years ago we were good, but we're even better now. And that is exciting to me. And I just can't wait for more and more people to see all the good that our field staff and our institution staff and our finance people and our HR and our entire agency, how we've grown and how much better we understand hope and how much better we understand the things that we need to do with our youth and family to get them to a point where they are good on their own, and that we can back out, and that, less sometimes is better, where I think before we thought the more we can do, the better they're going to be. Yeah, more is better. And so just what we have learned in all of that, I can't wait for people to see that from us.
I can't wait to begin to showcase the different things that everybody's doing across the state. So when we begin to bring in, I've heard people say, well, I don't know what they do. Well, I don't know what they do. This is a perfect way to show everybody, hey, this is what different pockets of the agency are doing, and then share it across agency.
Yeah. And that's what I was thinking about on the drive up too, was you see sometimes people really struggle with communication within the agency. That was one of the questions about on the survey, was how well does your agency communicate? But we've seen, like with newsletters, not everybody is a big newsletter person. And if this is just another way to communicate also what's going on within the agency, and that's something that I personally feel very passionate about in the field. I really struggled with not knowing what was going on. And I'm an open book. And I think in my personal life, I'm an open book. And with my team, I'm an open book. I want people to know what's going on. And I think this is just one more way that we can get the information out about what's going on within the agency. And if people enjoy the podcast, this is a great way for them to also be able to get that information.
Yeah, I think it's also a great way to put a face to names.
Absolutely.
Right, because then it takes out some of that layer of fear. It's like, oh, I'm just contacting Allison.
Right, instead of somebody at state office.
Yeah.
You're right. Or if we bring in somebody from the field and it's, Teresa Barnes from the Panhandle, then if I get stuck in the Panhandle for some reason, I know somebody.
Or you want to create a mentor program, and so now you have a name, a face, and a contact.
Absolutely.
It's like, oh, that's Teresa.
That's right.
Let me get you her number.
That's right. Or if, I remember a time where Connie from Muskogee County was down in our area, and her car broke down, and her state car broke down on her, and it's like, we'll take you back to Muskogee. It's when stuff like that happens, it's no fun to be by yourself. So if you can know people, have a name to a face, it's only better.
Because we're all here to help.
Exactly.
We're all here to help.
Exactly.
So, that's good. I think that we want to share that we'll have transitions. And so sometimes you'll hear us talking here, and sometimes we'll be at the podcast table next to us. So you'll get to see that as well. Sometimes we'll have 2 people here. Sometimes it'll be 4, and that'll help us determine what space we're in. All right, you guys, we're here with our new Chief Legal Officer, Laura Talbert.
Hi, I'm Laura.
Laura, this position is new within the agency, so why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
That is true. I have been here about a month now. I have worked in both government and private practice. I am excited to get back in kind of government work, and I'm looking forward to doing what I can to support the agency. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so glad you have joined us. So one of the first things I think that we have seen from you is the memo about AI. So that was kind of what sparked our interest and said, let's have her on. So as most of you all know, I am geeking out about AI. So whenever I saw that memo, my heart was crushed. I was like, oh gosh, no more AI. But I think, I thought, wow, it's just such a setback for us in the agency, and everybody's going to run ahead and they're going to get so much further than us because, we're banned now from using AI. But after having some conversations, that really is not the intent of the agency, right?
Yeah, no, it's not the intent. The intent currently is to make sure that when we utilize AI, that we're doing it ethically and responsibly. And right now, without any sort of protections or framework in place in the form of processes or procedures, we can't guarantee responsible use of artificial intelligence. And what we're really talking about when we say that there is a prohibition on utilizing artificial intelligence, what we're talking about are those things that create content for you. So obviously, anytime we use Google, we're using some component of AI.
Right.
Anytime we are using spell check in Word, if you use Quillbot or Grammarly to assist you
Right.
in drafting, those things are not what we're talking about, because the difference really becomes what is taking the content that you are putting into it and saving it.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Right.
So when you're using spell check in Outlook or you're Googling certain things, that's not really our concern at this time. What we are talking about is when you have I'll use ChatGPT for
Right.
example. If you have ChatGPT create something, create content of some sort for you, we have to be extremely careful about not only the information that we give to that artificial intelligence as a base for the creation of the content, but also we have to be responsible in the output of the content. We have to make sure that we are going through detail by detail that content that is created and making sure that we are responsible in its use. We verify accuracy, all of those things. So really the intent of the prohibition was just for the interim period until we can get those processes and procedures in place to really kind of govern how we can use AI in our working environment.
And that's one of the things that I have heard from a lot of people around the state whenever I talk to them about AI is I don't know how to use it, or I don't know how it works, or whatever. And whenever we're getting in there and we're trying to learn it, and if we feel like, oh, I have a good solid base of knowing how to do it, and then we accidentally put something in there that has a kid's information in it, or some kind of data in it that shouldn't be shared, because we do have to remember that once it's in there, it's out there for the world. It's kind of like the things we tell our kids about the internet. Once it's there, you can't get it back. So as we're learning, we just want to make sure that we're protecting our employees and we're protecting the youth and families that we work with, that it's not accidentally getting out there and our employees are doing something not on purpose. We're not saying our employees are being irresponsible on purpose. That as they're trying to learn this new world, that they may do something that could cause harm to a family or a youth by getting their information out there that they didn't mean to.
Yeah, I would probably analogize it to the cybersecurity training that was recently pushed by OMES
Right.
that we all have to complete.
Right.
Throughout any of those cybersecurity trainings, they first have to teach you what the different kinds of cyber attacks are, right? Like, they have to teach you that first to be able to test you and make sure that you understand how these things work and you know what to look out for. The same is going to be similar with the policies and procedures that we put out on artificial intelligence. Because exactly what you're saying, you don't know what you don't know. And
Right.
so when you're trying to learn things and you're putting information in, that's a standard way for anybody to just trial and error. This is what works, this doesn't.
Right.
We have to have those underlying policies and procedures in place so we are learning in a way that is not damaging to the individuals that we serve or our agency as a whole.
Right. So now let's talk about those policies and procedures being put in place. We know sometimes that can take an extended amount of time. And this AI as a whole, I mean, it's growing every day. And so if we are waiting for OMES to get something put into place and the technology is running away with it, what's our thought as an agency on that?
How long is this going to last?
Exactly.
Okay.
How long is it going to take?
Right.
Yeah.
So I do not know OMES's timeline. I have heard that they are working on rolling out kind of a variety of policies and procedures surrounding the use of AI. I have not gotten a solid answer yet on when they anticipate that being complete and are ready to roll out. So I am going to continue to try to seek that. In the event that it is longer than a month or two, which my gut tells me that it likely is, otherwise, like, the planets rarely align in that way, you know what I mean? Then we're going to roll out an interim policy.
Okay.
So that will govern us, and it is not going to be a complete prohibition by any means.
Okay.
It is just going to be an interim policy until OMES rolls out what they have been working on. And if that fits for us and that's what we want to utilize, then we'll roll that out. If that doesn't quite fit with us, then we'll work on an updated policy and get something out that after we've been able to review what they have done and kind of combine it with our thoughts on the use of AI in our agency.
And what fits best for us.
Correct.
Yeah, which is great to hear, because I think that's something that all of us that are in the world of AI really is just looking for, is just guidance, training. I mean, that's big thing, right? We all want to be able to be trained to use it appropriately, because I think as employees, none of us want to do anything wrong or inappropriate. We don't want to do any harm to any of the families that we serve. We don't want to do any harm to our agency.
Right.
And if we have that training and then we have the policy in place, I think that's just a win-win for everybody.
AI is the way of the future.
Absolutely.
I mean, if we are not utilizing AI responsibly and ethically, if we just decide on a complete prohibition and that's going to last long term, we absolutely will get left in the dust. It is going to make everybody's jobs more difficult, because it would be silly not to use it in the ways that we can. It's just figuring out what those ways are and making sure that we are using it in a way that not only is the agency protected, but again, everyone that we serve are also protected in their information. And we focus a lot on just confidential personal identifiers, but in an agency like ours, there are a variety of other things that is of concern. I mean, there are security risks
Absolutely.
that could potentially be at issue, so it's more than just names and ages of the juveniles or the counties in which these families live. I mean, there are a litany of things that are potentially problematic when we are talking about plugging them into some AI program for it to create content for us.
It's remembering. I
Correct.
think that's one of the key things to take away from this technology that's different, is it's remembering what we're putting in, a lot of times for the purpose of pulling it out again for another user.
Exactly. And not only is it remembering, but there are next to no safeguards on what that program can do with the information that we input into it.
Absolutely.
So we got to be cautious and do our due diligence before we roll out a policy/procedure for utilization for OJA staff.
Well, thank you so much for coming on and talking about it and letting us know that it's not a complete ban. We just want to make sure that we are responsible as an agency for ourselves and our employees.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Do we have any closing thoughts for the second half of this podcast space? We're going to talk with Janelle. We're going to talk with Janelle and our resources page and kind of how that came about and how workers can begin to use that with youth and families.
I'm excited to hear what Janelle has to say about that.
Yeah.
So I would just say, in closing, in our part, again, thank you all for being here, and showing us grace and being patient with us and on how all of this comes about. So we will be back with Janelle.
All right, welcome back, OJA. So we're going to talk to Janelle a little bit this morning about the new resources page, and how that came about and how you can use it. So Janelle, thanks for being here.
Thank you for inviting me.
So I love the work that you're doing. So we have a resources page now, we have a lot of information on it. When I say we, you've created a lot of information on it. So tell me, how did the resource page come about?
Okay, well, I want to say on our website that we already had a resources page. It just wasn't really broad. It wasn't this expansive resources we wanted. I knew over time that, gosh, that's probably something we should work on and expand. But with the development of Family Advisory Council, so the Oklahoma Family Network and Evolution Foundation helped us and helped support us with creating and inviting members to be on a Family Advisory Council. And so we have very passionate people on that advisory council. And during the same time, we also hired a family engagement coordinator. So this was all happening at the same time. So April Owens had filled that position and helped to facilitate those and still does to help facilitate those meetings. And so initially, we had listening sessions. We just listened and tell us about your experience coming into contact with juvenile justice with your child. How did that feel? And we kind of went through the continuum of care, continuum of juvenile justice. What was that like at intake? Mm-hmm. And then one of our parents said, well, it doesn't start just there. It starts at arrest, right, and my kid going to detention, and right, me trying to visit my kid in detention and trying to get answers to my questions about what's going to happen. And
or even, where's my kid?
Right, where's my kid? Exactly. Right. That did come up.
Yes.
Where's
mm-hmm.
my kid? Are you going to take my kid?
Mm-hmm.
So looking at that level of anxiety and fear that might happen during intake, how could we help with hope and communication and, just coming from the lens of the parent or caretaker on what that felt like, to be more, to acknowledge that, be more aware of that during those visits or interactions. And so one of the things that was prominent in those listening sessions was we wish we would have known about or had access to resources that would have helped us earlier on with our children when they first started having behavioral issues. So that could have been when they were a child. That could have been 7 years old or 9 years old or something like that, even younger. And rural versus urban, those kind of questions came up about what's available. And could that have changed the trajectory of their child coming, and whether it was child welfare or into the juvenile justice system, or having child welfare interactions in juvenile justice. So we knew then that we really needed to look at that resources page and see what we could do. And fortunately, because we have such a collaborative spirit in this state with our sister agencies and organizations, we had this wealth of knowledge and resources at our hands, really. And going and visiting, going to different meetings and things like the Children's State Advisory Work Group, where we have all these people at the table and talking about and having presenters talking about the resources they had. Things like Be a Neighbor, and we know about 211, where you can actually put your zip code in and you can find services in your local area. But there's just so many more resources out there now that help parents. Right. Parenting supports, free services that where somebody comes to your home and helps you, or there's a warm line you can call in and get help on there. So we want to make sure we got all those things on there. And one of the things we talked about too, and talking to the families on the Family Advisory Council and getting feedback on what this would look like in our communications department, and how could this look? How could this be formatted? And one of the things on the old version of the resources page, you just had links. You just had these www. blah, 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 and you didn't really know who they were or what they did. And so I thought, well, one of the things we could do is organize it into sections, topics like education and health and safety and prevention, family support, and those things. So let's first talk about having these areas where somebody can just go in and that's what I need, or that's probably where I'm going to need resources there. And then instead of just putting links, let's put what that link is, what that organization is, and a description of what they do, whether that's their mission and vision or just some of the services they provide. So youth services agencies are on there, their maps on there. And then we've got all these other resources available for parents and youth, and how to get your GED, how to get concrete supports, just a multitude of resources available on there now. And I know our family members were so excited that they're on the Family Advisory Council, so excited about that being there. And they're starting to share it. They're starting to share those resources. And we're so excited about sharing those resources with other parents they knew and came into contact with that were having some issues with their family.
And I love this idea because I think before this, a lot of times families felt like the only way they could get help was to walk into a JSU office, and what that caused them, because then they felt like they were turning on their kid, you know, that they were having to tattletale or you know, like they had to get to that crisis level before they could felt like I have nothing else. So I'm at my wit's end. And then they would walk into the JSU office. And then at that point, it was a crisis intervention for us.
Right.
And we're like, oh my gosh, if we could have helped a long time ago and given resources. So I, as a previous JSU worker, I love this because then they're able to go on as a parent and, like you said, try to problem solve way before we get to a crisis. And, you know, we're maybe not getting that phone call if I need you to come lock my kid up.
So all of these areas, each of these areas, we put descriptors on what could be found in there. And then we have a section on family engagement, and there's an email there to the family engagement coordinator and myself, to April and me. And we've actually had people reach out on there asking for help.
That's awesome.
Their kids aren't necessarily involved in the juvenile justice system, but are approaching that. And so they're wanting help and looking to other support. And then we have the Hope Navigator section that talks all about the science of hope. And we have a Hope Navigator email there as well for people reaching out to learn more about that. So it's really,
that is great.
Really proud of that work that came about from that. I think it was needed, and I'm glad that manifested through all the people that helped to do it. I'm hoping it is helpful and supportive to everyone.
Yeah, so I wanted to circle back to that for a second because I did misspeak earlier. There are people who helped. And so who are all the people that had a hand in bringing this together for all the workers?
Well, communications. I mean, we had Constanzia and Paula, Christensen that helped with that. Getting these things on there and helping, you know, it was amazing. Okay, how can we? Because there was planning that went into this. How is this going to look on the webpage? How should we separate this out? You know, and looking at other websites and how they broke it up. And so there was a lot of planning there and strategy on what this was going to look like. So we really appreciated that help. And then, of course, the family members of the PAC, the Family Advisory Council gave input on how to do that, the various members there.
I love that too, because your audience is parents. And so then you were able to have parents actually looking at it saying, yes, this would have been helpful to me.
And we had our own staff there that also contributed. You know, people that joined the Family Advisory Committee, Carol Miller, Greg Delaney, some of various people. Carrie, you've been on there. Allison, you've been on there. That have given input that have contributed to the resources on here. But the format and how we did that. That was some strategy and planning there, and I love how it came out. The final product.
Yeah, so it's really helpful, I think, to have the descriptions there. I know a lot of times as a worker, the resources that we had, we weren't even sure they existed once you clicked on them any longer.
Right.
And so,
some didn't.
Yeah, and so you guys were able to go
that doesn't
through
go
that.
anywhere.
Yeah, and then pull out some of those key points on why you would want to click
Mhm.
this link.
Mhm.
So you kind of help filter that out for
Right.
readers.
Yeah, and I like all the websites on there too that where if you are looking for something local, you can put in your city, or like we have a link on there to the county health departments where you can go find where your county health department is and the services that they provide, and just things like that. DRS has a whole resource handbook they have on there that has all these other resources that you can look at. So there's just so many resources on there that could, a parent can come on here, or a worker, one of our staff can come on here and say, I need to find something for this family.
That's great. Yes.
And that's needing help. What can I do here? And hopefully be able to go, homelessness.
Right.
I need to help somebody with finding a place to live and those kind of things.
So oftentimes we know the resources in our own area. And when families are needing help outside of that, that's where we really needed the help to understand what else exists outside of our area. Yeah. And so I wanted to talk about for a second the parents. How do they feel about their worker and how knowledgeable their worker is and how much help they provided?
Yeah, on the listening sessions, I'm glad you brought that up. That was one of the things they brought up in that experience of intake and just on the continuum, that they felt their workers generally were very helpful. Yeah, that was really good to hear. It was that they provided information on what was going to be happening and being able to navigate. Because we asked about what did that feel like to be in intake? Did that create anxiety or fear? And I think sometimes it does, but this group really shared that they felt like their worker was trying to help them and advocate for them and help with ease that process as well as possible. Mm-hmm.
So what are some of the ways that you hope workers are able to use the resources page?
So one of the things that I would hear over the years is a parent would call in to a local JSU office or the state office looking for help, and oftentimes looking for somewhere where their kid could be placed outside of the home.
Right.
And so that the response would be, well, unless they're in the juvenile justice system or have an adjudication or in custody, we can't help you there.
Right.
And so instead of saying we can't help you there, we can help.
Yes.
We can say, and I'm sure this is happening, we can say, well, here's your local youth services agency, or here's this local behavioral health agency, or here's our website. Please visit our website. There are so many resources there that could possibly help you. Here's the mobile crisis and response number.
Right.
That you could contact depending on what the situation is. I've given that a number out a couple of times now from people reaching out on the email.
Yeah.
So that's what I would hope would happen from that, and that's something we've been sharing with people we know at the state office that answer the phone there.
Yes.
Shared this website with them. I think it's been very helpful in that respect because that is something to link people to.
I'm so glad you brought that up, Janelle, because we don't have to wait for a youth to get arrested, to catch a charge, to get a police report sent to OJA before we can help.
Right.
And oftentimes we feel like our hands are tied and there's not much we can do. But this is absolutely a way that we can assist a family in giving them a resource and giving them something tangible that they can go and do. It's not something that we have to sit and call and make that referral or whatever, but it gives us something to give back to the family and say, here are ways that you can look through and know your need.
Right.
You know the need that your family has. And I love that these are tabbed out into those different needs and that they can actually go and find the resource.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about the categories that workers are going to see when they go to that youth and families tab on our page. So it's broken down into 8 categories. You talked a little bit about
Mhm.
the family engagement and the hope.
Mhm.
And so those are 2 of the areas that workers will see and families will see when they go there. There's also a family support and preventative services. And so once clicking on that, it'll bring up several other links.
Multiple links, and that's where the mobile crisis link is. You can find the youth services agency that's there in the map to be able to enter your zip code. Behavioral health services, many parent support type, family support and prevention type resources are on that page.
So if a worker,
Statewide access, warm lines.
so that's probably a good tab to
Yes.
know
Mhm.
and say, if you're unsure,
Mhm.
click that way.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's some of the information can cross over. Like we have a tab for youth, and there's some resources on there specific to youth. Like one of them is about bullying. There's some helplines for youth there, but you could also go into housing, and there's transitional living resources there. You can go to education. There's resources there that also applies to youth. So it's not just there's other resources there for youth. I just want to make
So
sure
they
that's
cross
clear. Yeah,
tabs?
there's kind of crossover. Some of the resources we have in a couple of different
Oh, that's great.
categories,
Yeah, no,
because
that's great.
somebody
Yeah,
might see it here, but might be over here and miss it. So
That's
we
great.
want to make sure they were on there.
That's great.
So when I clicked on the family support and preventative services, one of the things that popped up in my mind is, boy, this is excellent for workers, even new workers, to research.
Mhm.
What is out there across the state
Mhm.
and to begin to learn.
Right.
So one of the first links under the family support services is youth services.
Right.
And we work with youth services, we refer,
Right.
but it was great to read their mission statement,
Mhm.
read what they're about.
Mhm.
This way, it kind of embedded it. Like I learned
Right.
it.
Mhm.
I learned it
Right.
just by going in and reading up on it.
Right. I think one of the things I experienced too, because in my role with the agency, I get to see all these. I get to see all these presentations at the various meetings I go to, and I'm like, gosh, we need to get this stuff to the workers,
Right.
so they know about these things. And I've done a lot of work in the area of homelessness, and so I just had this list of resources for homelessness, and I wanted to make sure those were on there, and transitional living resources, and all this parenting stuff. I've been involved in different projects with that over the years, and it's like, oh gosh, all this stuff needs to be on there. And there's new ones popping up too. And we keep updating it with new resources that we become aware of. So it's a live thing here that's flexible, and we can add to it.
That's great to hear too, that it's
Mhm.
not something that you did one time and then it's going to be
Right.
outdated in 6 months or
Right.
a year.
Right.
So
So it's not our intent to go through every bit of it piece by piece, but at this time. But we're going to continue to bring more of the resources to the front of workers' minds, and this page to the front of workers' minds, so we can begin to share what is there. That way, when they hear it, they remember, oh, wait,
Let's
I
go
can
there.
use the website
Right.
and learn more.
and to be clear, this is not our intranet. This is
So-
our OJA
Right.
website.
That's the website.
So that is, oftentimes we as workers forget about our OJA website because we're so used to just going to the intranet.
Mhm.
So this is our OJA website.
Right, and we've developed. We have a hope brochure that has the link to the website on it, the scanner code, QR
The
code,
QR code.
QR code. So because so many people have, they can access things that way now.
That's
It's
right.
the time we're in, and so that links them right to the website.
So, what would you say to people who say nobody uses the website? What would you say?
I would say use the website.
Use the
Use the website.
It's, there is a lot of help out there, not just for for both the youth and families, but also for staff to be able to help somebody. that's in need, and even just referring them to the website, I think is a big help. I've shared our website, or start sharing our website and link in chats on on meetings I'm in. I'll put the link in there. I've shared it with our sister agencies and organizations, because sometimes they'll cross over and meet with families that are having, that there's youth in the home that are having challenges, and maybe there's a resource on there that they can link. The Systems of Care Coalition meetings that I attend, some of these online meetings I'll attend, I'm generally putting our link to the website, our Youth and Resources page.
So there's a lot of work going into making this a valuable resource,
right?
To where we can give it to families and know that they're getting up to date, valuable information to help their family.
Right.
All right, Danelle, thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you for this opportunity to share this, and I look forward to ongoing conversations about it. Yeah. All right. Thank you both.
So for OJA, things that are coming in the future with this is we're looking at even bringing the website to more of our resources. Maybe even having it in offices and QR codes and easier ways for your families to access the information.
Absolutely.
So stay tuned. Thank you for being here.